So yet again, here we are. This is the podcast of Pancake. I feel like that's an adequate name at this point, being that this is the second podcast in of itself in order of, chronological order and all that good stuff. Yet, welcome to the podcast of Pancake. Why do I have this name as such? Well, you don't know what ingredient that it's going to take. Keep on adding to those ingredients. Sometimes give it a flavor of spiciness. Sometimes give it a flavor of, just your peace of mind. But overall, this is a podcast of Pancake. Welcome. All one and small, big and tall, all that good stuff. Just keep on adding to the ingredients of your recovery because that's really what it is. And that's why I call it the pancake meeting. Because sometimes you just got to flip it. And now it's a flapjack or whatever. But no, you know what? Simply to say, just give yourself a high five today because you deserve it. You do deserve to take up space. You do deserve to be valued and loved. And, this is how I do that in this podcast right here, doing this. This is part of my recovery. This is an ingredient. Yes, I used to make podcasts in the past in of itself. And yet this moment, this is me actively part of my recovery. And so that's why this is the podcast or the pancake podcast, because you don't know what ingredient that you minus that is going to make your life a little unbalanced. And yet you do know what ingredients are going to keep you going. Well, you do. And so welcome to the podcast, pancake podcast, all that good stuff. Well, I hope I lined something up for you today. It all comes down to that in a sense. And yet really, I hope you find something that requires you to ultimately still be in the marathon of your life, your recovery, and an active part of that. That's really what this is all about. Sharing the message, clearing away all the distractions. Maybe in of itself, to simply say, just being an active part of your recovery is really what it's all about. So go, keep on adding to the ingredients to your flavor of your pancake because you can. Can pan? I don't know, but you can. Welcome to the Pancake Podcast. So just to give a synopsis and a brief summary of what it can be of this podcast, I touch base on what it is to fill up your cup, to be willing to take up space and know that you do deserve that. So hopefully, I line something up in a way that more or less keeps on requiring you to come back, find your peace of mind, because ultimately that's what we all want. Welcome to the Pancake Podcast. Keep going, my friend. Keep going. Your shoes fit just right. Hi. So, in this moment of this voice recording or this podcast or whatever it may be, I feel inspired or wanting to have a spiritual awakening, as we could say, in that of finding your place in your time. Is it a cup? Can you fill it? Is there water? And can you fill it with that water? At that point, your attitude will always set you free. Mental or physical can be a prison, yet your attitude sets you free. As I'm not sure if I'm quoting it right, and I don't have it in front of me, yet from another podcast, Busy Living Sober, they talked about, I want to say page 166 or 164, where it basically says your attitude is what you need to change. And so it's always how you look at it. It's never about what it is, what it's not, what it can't be, what it can be, because it is just what it is. I don't think judging is proper, we could say. It leads us to unrealistic expectations, to say simply. Not that those expectations, which are really only for yourself, right? Control, forgiveness, and expectations are really for yourself. If it's expectations for somebody else, then that turns it into a demand. And then, of course, you're going to be let down if it's an expectation upon somebody else because they, are doing the best that they can and living life on life's terms. You know, what an elusive paradoxical statement, right? In and of itself, to say simply, you know, because, life is life and it is what it is. Yet, what are you making it? What are you doing to keep your peace of mind? And going into the point of, well, how do you fill it? How do you fill your cup? How do you find your place and your time? There's so many moments out there that we judge and we find it unworthy or it's not worthy enough. Well, what is the difference in that? It's almost the same difference, right? Yet, that's why I don't think judging is a proper way or a productive way about going about things. It's just being busy. You're just going through the motions. You're just listening. Now, listening is not a bad thing. There's nothing bad or good. It just is what it is. And that's where, in a spiritual foundation, a spiritual program, or just spirituality in general, it touches on the criteria that everything has value. And if everything has value, then that in of itself, there is no room for judgment. Once we have the understanding, right? Once we have the why is it this way now, or the how is it this way, then we can see the importance, the value, just like tradition 4. Let it run, except for matters affecting other groups, or focusing on the pain in and of itself, or what, depending on what 12-step recovery program you're linguistically referring as, that fellowship, right, as a whole. Okay, so let's reread that. Okay, so yeah, autonomous, yet let's reread that. So let it run, except for matters if it's spreading hatred, negative, or focusing on the pain, or devaluing things, stripping away the potential message, right, of the group in and of itself, or that of, if we go to the second part of after the or, of the fellowship itself. And so if you focus on the pain, and you're never going to get to the solution. So using tradition 4 in that sense of letting it run unless it's focusing on the pain or devaluing, to simply say. Because some get so boggled down by, well, this was written over 100 years ago. Well, it's not necessarily 100 years, about 80-ish, right? It's getting up to 100. Yet, we don't shut the door on the past. Why? Why would you shut the door on the past? You're judging it unworthy? You think that you know more. Well, if we shut the door on the history, the high story, it's not really his story unless you're using like the legalese S looking thing that has the line through it or whatever it is, the two double stacked overlayered S, which does have something. I don't recall what it is at this moment. Yet I think it's like section and subsection or something like that. Yet regardless, nevertheless of that, in that moment of, what could be seemingly seen as an outside issue, right? So I had to drink some coffee, and that's why I paused it. And yet, when we judge something, are we really finding our peace of mind? Are we really finding our place and our time? Are we really filling up our cup with the water that's in front of us? These tools that in of itself are set up as, the only setup in recovery. Because there was a moment in before I came to this, through a spiritual awakening, a deeper understanding, in a simple way of saying, of, well, the only setup in recovery is, the steps, the principles, the history that we do not wish to shut the door upon, right? And yes, it's funny because if you say wish, and it depends on your relative context of your definition of how you're referring to things as, we could say, are you talking right? Are you, yet going with the continuance and the continuum of the paradox of, of what tradition 4 is. How is it a paradox? Well, if you let it run, unless it's affecting other groups, or as or A as a whole, right? If we paradoxically answer that or reword it into a monody means, it's let it run, except for if it's focusing on the pain and negativity and hurt or devaluing things, right? So then we can also say that judging is that same thing. So how do you fill your cup up? There is a cup and there is water, right? And so how do you keep on finding your peace of mind? Because ultimately, that's what I think it is. This whole recovery thing is so simply stated that we overlook the simplicity of it, right? And even saying simplicity is not the same thing as simple. It can be, but isn't that just another way of saying the paradox in and of itself? Sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. Isn't that the perfect definition in of itself of recovery? Sure. Yet that is the adequate definition of a paradox. Sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. And if we see that we have this tool, that we have the ability to say, okay, what is the value of this? Right? Which we start with our understanding, the why or the how in and of itself. Maybe more of the how or more of the why. Because if we have the understanding, right, we're asking questions. We're being agnostic about it. Which, if you look in the original meaning and interpretation and intent of what is agnostic, you see it's just questioning things. It's not like the modern day means of, oh well, you don't believe in anything, right? That's what an atheist is, right? So the original meaning of it is just you're questioning things. You have a question and you're pursuing that question, right? And so going back to what I was saying about the wish thing, in of itself, if you have this pain and you're not focusing on the solution and what is your part and how can you bring value to it, we could say a wish, which originates in the sense of what brings a wish. A genie. Well, what is a genie? Is a jinn demon, right? And so we can all go into the levels of what that can mean of, well, essentially you're giving your power away to something else so that it can feed, right? That's how it gets to feed today, that energy transfer or whatnot, right? And it's kind of funny because everything's an energy vampire. It just the degree, the level of the what you're doing with it, what tool and how you're using this tool. Are you doing what tradition 4 is absolutely about? Letting it run, except for in matters affecting other groups or A as a whole. Be autonomous in of itself, letting it run. And so if you focus on the pain that, oh, it's a demon, right? That demon in and of itself is just a moment of, well, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your part, right? If we're all a continuum of the original state of consciousness, whatever that may be, creation, unconditional love, hope, through our faith and our hope and all that kind of stuff. Because there's only a few things that I take from theology. Because spirituality, theology, politics, all whatever it may be, religion, it doesn't even matter what word we're using, right? Because the only reason we're using that word, that title, is, okay, yeah, it was given through the agreed upon structure of that society, right? So, yeah, simply, why are we using that context or whatever it may be to sum up that context, that event, that happening, of simply to say, how can one word regardless if it's a $50 word or whatnot, is that it simply is that we're going from having to focus on that and we're skipping ahead. Basically, we're in a sense, we're crediting ourselves the time and having to reinvent the wheel and getting to the point of what is the solution, right? Not to say that all that is pain, right? It's not going against what tradition 4 would be. It's just more like the promise 1. We're painstaking about it, right? We're putting in work, effort into seeing the ability to have this discussion, the communication, this conversation. We don't need a debate, right? We don't need to argue. We're not trying to judge, because that's what that all is, right? You're trying to prove your point over their point, right? In a absolute timely manner before we all have to go and do something else, or what it may be, right? Going off the rules of what a debate is and how they run it. And so, it really comes down to, how do we do something about it? Yes, there are moments where the communication, that discussion, because you don't know, and now you're not at the level or the measure or whatever the happening, whatever it can be summed up as, to say you're not being taught or you're not being preached at, is what I'm attempting to say and have said, right? Because if you look at the etymology, the history of what is preaching, preaching originates from a pastor going to the convicted and just reminding them, hey, you know what's what. What do you want to do right now? This is your moment to choose, right? Almost like what step 2 is, right? Because there's a point where they come and say, hey, step 1, what's going on? You're powerless over this. You can't change it. And because you can't change it, it's going to make your life unmanageable. So what are you going to do? Step 2, to, come to believe that there's something out there to restore you to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to get our peace of mind, right? A higher power. And that might be what that is at that moment. That higher power is your peace of mind. Ultimately, that's what we all want. Yet, in the care of, at that moment, to restore us to sanity, right? And so, to say simply, how do you get preached at? Or are you at a moment of being taught? Because so then we keep on going with the preaching originates from a pastor going to the convicted. And then in the modern day sense of a paradoxical development, we could say, but isn't that just another way of saying paradox? Or saying sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. That when you get preached at, you're being reminded, right? And so it morphs into this modern day means of the preacher preaching to the choir, right? Everyone already knows about this, right? But now you're willingly going somewhere and you're not convicted of anything. You're just asking questions. You're being an atheist, right? Because you're not willing, or you're more willing to go to a place, a moment, or whatever it may be, to kick in your ignorance. And ignorance has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has everything to do with ignoring something, right? You're ignorant. So you're focusing on something to focus on something else. That's what ignorance is. And that's what being an atheist is, right? And that's another means of what anonymity is, right? Not focusing on and using tradition 4 and tradition 5 in of itself, to where you're being able to put aside that one aspect, however daunting, however prevalent, and all that kind of stuff, almost being like a philosopher in and of itself, to say simply. So then we have this moment of, are you being preached at, reminded, or are you being taught? Now, if you're being taught, you never knew it before. So how can you be preached at? You're not being reminded. Yeah, we could say at a fundamental spiritual level that you chose to be here, and you, before you came here, and now that you're here, you kicked in your pretend amnesia, we could say, or not even pretend, just amnesia at that point, right? You're acting like you forgot everything, okay? Yet, isn't that the most efficient, most elegant way of just learning something, right? Totally just acting like that doesn't exist, having that ignorance at that moment of a soul level, right? Coming here, having this experience, whatever that experience is, right? So if you're at a level of being taught at and teached, because the teacher's only going to come when the student's ready for the answer in the lesson, right? At that point, there is no bad student, there's only a bad teacher. And even then, it's not that they're a bad teacher, it's just they're not at the level of being that teacher anymore. They're at a student trying to teach a student, the blind leading the blind, almost before they turn the hatred, which is like a noun, into a verb, malice behavior, right? And poking everybody's eye out, right? Which this spiritual awakening I get just at this moment from my higher power is poking everybody's eye out. Well, what eye are we talking about? Don't we have two? Are we talking about the physical eyes? And, oh, you got a loner, you're good to go, you can still see, right? Are we talking about your third eye? Yet. So it comes down to, what is your moment of finding your peace of mind? Being a part of your life. Being in the marathon of your life, of your recovery, so that in the past you did recover, right? So, yet in the moment of now, it's about recovery, repair and recovery. Okay? Yes, in that back in the day, in that moment, you acted like that. Okay, are you going to forgive yourself today in this moment? Are you going to do something about it to fill up your cup again? To pick back up that cup so that you can fill it up. You can give it away freely. Yes, don't put yourself in debt. Yet, in and of itself, to say simply, you are a made in the image of. Now, this goes to the point where I was referring to before, the few things that I take from theology, the Bible. BI is always two, right? Bicycle, there's two wills, okay? And then, BLE is always able, with or without the A. So the Bible, there's two ables. Whatever that may be, it's not meant to be one thing. It's not a Bible. It's not a one Bible. It's the Bible. It's two ables. And so what I would like to touch on, what the value I get from the Bible and theology and all that kind of stuff is, it says you're made in the image of. Now, image, when you look it up, in a sense, is a copy, right? It's a duplicate. Okay, then from science, one of the few things that I take from that, the value that I get from that, is that everything's energy, okay, and then energy can't be destroyed, it can just change form. Well, in that last statement right there, energy can't be destroyed, it can just change form, means that it's already stating that that original energy, that form that it changed from, doesn't stop existing, okay? It just changes form. Because if you go ahead and apply the whole everything's energy, okay, and energy can't be destroyed, it can just change form. Okay. So then you go ahead and apply the whole made in the image of. Okay, so if we're made in the image of, and everything is energy, and energy can't be destroyed, it can just change form, we're just a continuum, paradoxically, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, answering, how can we be the same exact thing in a different form upon itself, an experience? In what way can we regain ourselves, becoming whole and unity upon itself, tradition one, right? We have to freely give what we have in a calm and welfare kind of a way, and it's common. So everybody wants it and everybody needs it. And it's welfare. It's given away freely. There's points where, okay, what is welfare in economics and society? Well, you didn't work for it and you still need it because you need to eat, right? Kind of thing. Yet, our common welfare should come first. Yeah, should is a very dangerous way of living. Don't should on yourself and don't should on somebody else, right? Don't SHITT. I'm just jesting at that moment. Yet, there's a point in and of itself to where, what are you going to do in a common matter to give away what you have freely? So that what is the goal? And the bottom line is, unity, AA unity depends on personal recovery depends on AA unity. Having a place to where you can feel that you are valued, that you're not going to be judged, that you're able to fill your cup up or pick up your cup. Finally picking up your cup, because maybe you didn't get that chance in the very beginning ever, because you got to be part of your life, right? You were unbalanced. There's 3 kinds of sobriety. Some could say there's 4. Okay, if you need that depth and that level and that's what gets you and keeps you to being sober, go for it. It's all up to you. This is your personal recovery. This is your journey. That's what your Tradition 5 is all about. What message are you carrying today in this moment, right? It can be the 36 principles that there is. Yet, what message are you carrying? And in what way are you continually improving and making conscious effort? What is step 11? Okay. And through step 12, being of service as the virtue of itself, right? To not give up hope. And that's why it's so crucial for you to find your balance. Because, some say there's 4 kinds of sobriety: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Yeah, it's a simple program. Don't overcomplicate it. Emotional and mental are the same thing. They really are. Does your emotional and mental happenings, state of mind, position, disposition, attitude adjustment that needs to be done in a sense, is that taking in the physical form? Or is it at the level of a spiritual matter, right? And so, since it's really not taking action or depth of what is the intensity or the agnostic behavior of in a physical form, or can at that point, yet or to say simply the spiritual matter of life. So since it's a simple program, there's only 3 kinds of sobriety in of itself, to say simply. There's a physical, there's emotional, and then there's spiritual, right? If you're using your stinking thinking in some way, shape, or form, you're out of balance. So maybe you're not physically using, but you're emotionally putting yourself in debt, or you're spiritually putting yourself in debt, or those are the moments that you are being triggered. Prompted is a trigger, prompted to work on yourself, right? Because it doesn't matter what step you're on. It doesn't matter what piece of paper says what step. Okay? It comes down to the simple fact that if you are actively part of your life and your recovery in the marathon of your life, that now you get to work on that part that is at step 0, more research, right? Or yet to come to a point of unity upon yourself and being of service and all that kind of stuff, and being in the promise of one, painstaking about it, right? Or maybe that is what promise of one is really talking about, the painstaking, right? Because that's what it would be, right? You now get to work on that part of yourself, to unify yourself, because that part of yourself hasn't yet, or just at this moment of now, getting to be part of yourself again, and you get to work on it. So you go through step 1 to step 12, right? Hopefully you don't 13 step yourself and, F yourself, right? In a sense of saying, distract yourself from what is important, the message and the newcomer. Okay? And that's why the newcomer is the most important part. And, sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. A paradox upon itself. You're the newcomer at that point, or that part of yourself that is at step 0, going to be worked on at that moment because you were triggered, prompted to find balance, to be able to have your time and your peace of mind, right? And so that's what it's really all about. So because it's at that moment where I get to be part of my life and go on, do other things. Because it's about that balance, that moderation. Anything without moderation is an addiction upon itself. And at the simple fact that I want to get this message out there. I want to not reach 100% perfection at that point, right? Not taking anybody's ability away to have their spiritual awakening as it could be. Because if we're all reaching 100% of perfection before we get to be a master, and we're not practicing the principles in all our affairs, then we're never going to get anything done. We're expecting and controlling others, which in and of itself, these demands and this level of narcissistic behavior, because you have too much hatred and you're focusing too much on the pain and you're devaluing even yourself at that moment. And so, I'm going to get this out there. I'm not going to edit this. There's not really an edit needed, unless it didn't record, which, there's points. Yet, how do you fill up your cup? And how do you give it away freely? Because if you give it away and it comes back to you, well, then it's yours to keep with care this time. Yet, if it was taken from you, then it was probably never really yours in the beginning, right? Let that hurt go. Give it back. Give that pain of what their growth is. Stop renting space in your head for them, right? But don't forget what has happened, yet forgive. Don't shut the door on it, yet don't repeat it either. And yet, the point of this part is I'm just going to put this out there. Yeah, there's more things to touch on per se. Isn't there always? It's a continuous, constant contact, right? Of restoring our peace of mind, getting to a point of higher power, being able to love ourselves, unity. And we have to be painstaking about it so that we can lose our inability to, be okay with unconditionally loving ourselves through economics and all that kind of stuff, and not losing interest in our selfish things and never gaining interest in our fellows because we're so focused on trying to argue, trying to debate, wasting our time, being busy, listening, waiting for the elevator door to open, going through the motions. And so to simply say, this is this moment's podcast, about filling up your cup and being willing to have a cup, fill it up with water, and then give it away freely, right? You got to have that hope that when you get there, you're the teacher for that student. You're the best teacher, right? And that means simply fill up their cup with what you have. Don't let your cup overrunneth by doeth of your unwillingness to, shame yourself, right? Shall give away freely. Love thyself like thy neighbor, and so shall we be. And so simply to say, yes, you're there now, and hopefully they learn how to fish, okay? But if they don't, that's not your job to reparent themselves, right? That's their thing. That's their recovery. If they want to do it, they want to do it. Yet, simply to say, do the right thing. Always donate food, basically, right? Always donate what is in need. Yet, when you leave, you did the best thing that you can. You tried. Yet, hopefully they learn how to fish. And even if they don't, at that moment, you're leading them, helping them, guiding them into a way of getting ready to finally be able to learn how to fish, right? And if they're not, and maybe it takes two after you, right? Yet, and they might die. Oh, okay. Well, okay. That's whatever. It's spirituality. You don't ever really stop your energy, right? So simply to say, right? Yeah, the one that comes after might not have the same motivation, intent to be kind or whatever it is. Yet, the higher power of them gives them what they need at that moment because they asked for it. They prayed. Then they meditated. And that's the answer through their meditation because they prayed, right? And so, yeah, they might not learn how to fish at that moment, but you're getting them ready to, right? One day they're going to stop just listening and start being ready, hearing, active listening. And yet, don't reach perfection. Just go and let life do its thing. Don't steal the opportunity of life to do its job, trying to win every war yourself. Are you going crazy? Maybe. Just maybe. Yet, you have a beautiful one. I really do hope that I line something up for somebody, and even if I didn't, whatever. This is not the point of your sobriety and your recovery. This is mine. This is what I'm doing to be an active part of my recovery. So yes, I hope that I lined it up in a way that makes sense to you. And yet, even if it doesn't, and you're just understanding and you're trying to overstand and missing the point of just understand, just let it be and have a peace of mind, right? I hope this requires you, though, absolute hope that this requires you to keep coming back. Maybe not to this, but to something that's going to give you a peace of mind, your willingness, because you admitted and you came to believe. You made the decision. You had the searching inventory, right? And then you were ready to admit, okay? And then you humbly were at a point after you let those whatever pain go of that trauma and triggering thing to then finally making the list of what was going on, to then taking action, to then reevaluating, to then at the moment of what is important, to keep on communicating, to find, to ask, to not isolate, right? To use anonymity at that point of all that pain, to then focus on the solution. Absolutely. To then being able to keep trying and to be of service to yourself, to have those spiritual awakenings as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to the alcoholic who is still suffering. And we practice these principles in all our affairs. What is the ultimate principle, though? Your higher power. It's time to be reborn. Have a great day, everybody. Your shoes fit just right. You're beautiful. Thank you.